Hi. Uh, in this tutorial, we are going to be looking at how to do cloth in Dreams. This is pretty much something I've been fiddling with since launch because I'm an idiot and I really wanted to make a character that has a whole bunch of cloth on her. That's what you're looking at here. And yeah, let's get into how I achieved this effect where the cloth is, for the most part, not clipping through the character at all, but still able to move around even when she moves her arms or otherwise, jumps around, so that we have no clipping through the character for the most part. You're never going to get it perfect. It's not perfect in AAA games either. Don't worry about it. Okay, so first I'm just going to go into these shoulder cloth elements here because that's probably the most complex. First I'm going to turn on or turn off preview invisibility so you can see how I put these together. I'm gonna hide everything else. This is basically the rig for the cloth. Um, you can see it's a pretty simple assembly of connectors and sculpts. And there's also a keyframe here. And the keyframe is really important because I'll show you what happens if the keyframe is off. Now, no matter what you do with connectors, no matter how much you tweak their limits, their tightness and things like that, they tend to kind of fall apart when you have a bunch of them, even if you make the sculpts low density. What this keyframe is actually doing is adding a little bit of stability to these elements. So when I select it, you can see what is actually quote unquote animated by the keyframe itself. All I did for each of these pieces was go into record, turn on the grid, and then let's de-animate this piece. So all I did was just tap right trigger on it. So all that's doing is making the keyframe remember the position of that sculpt. And what this does is it makes the keyframe always try to keep the sculpts where they're supposed to be. And what you can do is tweak it so that there's a little bit of springiness to it. This means that the keyframe won't be 100% keeping everything in place. And overall, the effect you get with that is kind of a little bit of a bounce. So the sculpts will always try to be in place. Back here, let's see, I can't remember. Did I make this? Was it the whole group? Yeah, okay. So now you can see it on the character bouncing around. So as far as restricting the movement of the cloth, that's kind of your basics. I'll take a look at the assembly again so you can see one of my key things I figured out that I think is what really makes this work. And that is making use of, let's scope in here, is making use of a slider. Let's turn off the keyframe so I can play around with this. A slider will stop your assembly from getting to a certain point. So this is basically your quote-unquote cloth collision. It will not clip through the arm because of that slider. And then additionally, in order to make sure that the cloth doesn't only move left and right, we have that attached to another sculpt using a ball joint. And that's honestly, that's all there really is to it. From there, it's just about assembling your cloth to work well with these sculpts. So let's turn this off. And let's go into how we would make something like this from scratch. So here we are in a blank project with a puppet that I've dropped into it. And the main concept I want to go over that really is like the key to making this stuff work is how you can connect paint to sculpts. So first, let's just do a quick little line of paint here. Let's just be precise and, whoops, turn the grid on. Rule flex so that it is a nice connected line. Okay, so we got a line of paint here. And let's grab a sculpt. And just for the heck of it, yeah, let's line it up with the paint. Okay, so the first thing you want to do with your paint is to go in and make it physical, attached at both ends. Now, take your painting and grab it with right trigger, hover over what you want to group it with, and then hold L1 and X to group them together. You could also do this by selecting the two of them and then selecting group. Okay, so right now, oh, I goofed here. Those two cubes are a single sculpt. That is not what we want. Get rid of that. Okay, so now let's go in here, grab this, put down here, and I'm going to take it out of the group. So we have this group, and we have this sculpt by itself. Now, let's go back into the Paint Tweak menu, and we are going to attach the end to an object. Now let's just go back out, and just press X to select this. You got this white selection sphere here. So now, when I move this around, it's connected. So you got a single line of paint that is connected by these sculpts. Now, you can do all kinds of interesting things, like if I wanted this paint to be like a rope, for example, I'm going to grab this, and actually, let's group these together so that they can be together. And let's grab a connector, like a string. Let's, whoops, scope into the group first. And then let's grab a string. So as you can see, by restricting the movement of the sculpts, you can have some interesting behavior for the paint. So with that, that is basically how you rig, to use the best term I can think of, your cloth to behave in certain ways, and so that it doesn't collide with the character. You're just basically using the physical advantages of sculpts, which you can then make invisible later, to leaving the cloth behaving as realistically as you possibly can. Okay, let's get rid of this thing. All right, so let's give this guy a cape. So first thing I'm going to do is just make a couple of simple sculpts. And I tried to make these relatively in scale with the character first, as I've had some weird issues with doing like an assembly of connectors and then shrinking it down later. So I'm going to use the grid here just to help me keep things a little bit more precise. Yeah, that should be good. Okay, so let's do a cube. And then let's make two more. Now from there, we're going to grab some connectors. So we'll start with a ball joint to connect the first two. And then we will do a slider for the second two. Now let's just clean this up a little bit for my sanity. I'm going to go into view options and turn on X-ray so it's easier to work with this stuff. And let's take these connectors and, oh geez, okay, line them up with the grid, which you can do by holding R and then pressing triangle. This, I don't know why these get so huge sometimes, but let's just do that. And yeah, there we go. So as you can see, it's just a simple set of sculpts and connectors. If you want a more in-depth tutorial on that, there's plenty of them. Now that we have this, let's make sort of a rig for our cape. I'm going to keep it pretty simple. The nice thing about this concept is you can make it as over the top and detailed as you want. So let's grab this guy here and just bring it out a little bit. Go back into the sculpt menu and let's use the stretch tool. Just make ourselves like a little rectangle. Okay. And let's do another one over here. All right. This will form kind of the basis of our, like the base of our cape. So let's grab some more connectors. Probably just bolts for these, I think. Okay, let's clean these up a little bit. Make them a little smaller. And actually, to avoid having too many gaps in our cape, I'm going to hit triangle to do reposition connectors and just scoot this in. All right, that should be fine. Yeah, look at that. Nice and smooth, probably. Okay, so now let's take this whole gizmo here and let's group it with the puppet. I'm going to turn off X-ray connectors just so we don't accidentally grab something on the puppet. Let's scope in, and probably the abdomen seems like a, or not the, whatever this is. Oh, right. Hold on, sorry, let me back up a little bit here. Since these items are connected with connectors, but they are not grouped. Oops. So I'm going to double tap X to select them. Now, when you have a bunch of items that are connected by connectors, if you go to the base item, like where the connector started, and double tap it, it'll select them all as if they're in a group. So now let's group them. All right, now let us go into the puppet, stick that right on his butt. Seems like a good place. Well, let's make this a long cape, so let's make this a little bit lower. Yeah. Okay. So now what we want to do is go into this group. Let's grab this part. And let's make sure that we're grabbing the connectors too. I'm going to hold L1 and right trigger to clone it, grab it. And we're going to scope out to make this not part of the group. And scope out again. And then we are going to actually group this rig here. And then group it with, let's say the torso. That makes sense. So these are kind of the start and end point of the cloth. Scoot this back. Whoops. Scoot this back over so that there's a nice straight line between the two pieces. Okay. And you know something I really should have done from the beginning, but let's go and do it now. You do not want any of this stuff to be collidable. So let's just select all of this. Oops. Go into the group here. Select it all. Go into the physics properties and turn off collidable. Anything collidable on a puppet that collides with the puppet will mess up its momentum. If that were not the case, we would not have to do any of this, which is unfortunate, but what can you do? Okay, now let's go into this group and fix my mistake again. Right, okay. Actually, these top ones, you actually don't want these to be movable, because these are basically just like your base, but having them be the same rig as this one down here is kind of what allows you to pose the cloth on the character. Okay, so now we are going to make our cloth. So let's go to paint mode, and I find it easier for this step to turn on surface snap. Makes it easier to line up with the item it's going to be grouped with. So surface snap on, and with rule flex on, that's very important because that helps you draw a nice straight line between two things. So let's go down here, connect it to the other one. So right now it's just a paint stroke. It's not actually grouped with anything yet. So I'm going to grab this paint stroke here and scope in to group it with this rectangle specifically. And then we're going to do what we did earlier with the two sculpts. We're going to make it physical, attach it at both ends. I'm actually going to take the floppiness all the way down for this because the movement is mostly going to be the sculpts moving around, not the paint itself. Then we're going to not attach end to object yet. And one very important thing here to note is that you need these to be a bunch of cloned paintings, not one painting with a bunch of strokes in it. That helps with scaling this later. So with this, we're going to clone it. Let's go about here. I'm sure there's tons of videos on how to do this. That's not what this tutorial is about. Okay, so we got our paint here. I'm just going to group that so it's easier to tweak later. So now all these paintings are grouped with this rectangle. Then we're going to scope into that group of paintings. Let's get those connectors out of here. We're going to scope into this group of paintings and double tap X to select them all. It's going to be a little tricky sometimes, depending on how many you do. Go and open the tweak menu with all of them selected. I'm going to do attach end object. I'm going to scope out and start scoping in until we can't anymore. And then select the other rectangle. Now, this can be kind of a finicky process, so let's see if I screwed anything up. All right, there we go. So as you can see, as this sculpt moves, the cloth updates accordingly. So now what we can do is grab this group here, and we're going to clone it, scoot over. And this is an example of me not making it big enough. So let's actually do a quick little, let's back it up actually. Okay, we don't have attached end object selected. So let's make this a little bit bigger because like the thing is you want these pieces of your like cloth rig to kind of overlap a little bit so that when they're flopping around, it's more noticeable, or it's less noticeable. Oops. There we go. Okay, so now let's reattach that. Cool. So fun fact, when you are scoped into something and you want to scope into a specific object in another group, if you hold L1 and X, you can actually jump straight to it without scoping out then scoping back in, which can be pretty helpful with this process in particular. All right, so now let's duplicate this group, scoot it over. So you can see that it's still attached to that piece, but all we have to do is just go in, open that tweak menu, attach into object, and we're just going to change it to this guy. And one thing I forgot to do too is with this second group, you actually want it to be grouped with that rectangle. Oh, hold up. I've done it bad. Hold on. I've accidentally grouped or duplicated everything, including that other rectangle. We don't want that. Okay, this is what we want to clone. There we go. So now we have another painting, or another set of paintings. Each of them is grouped with one of these rectangles. All right, so now let's reattach again. Sorry, I don't have much time to do these, and it's going to be one take, so we'll see how much I can clean up in editing. All right, so let's reattach to the end again. Grab that there. All right, so now we've got a posable cape of sorts. Now one of the really cool things about doing this like attached at both ends thing is it allows you to kind of like shape the cloth now that you've rigged everything together. So if I take this piece here and move it closer to the torso, and let's go like towards the middle here, hold right trigger and then down the D-pad to resize it. Look at that, you kind of got a nice sort of capely shape going on here. Now you can see that there's we got some like weird like shades thing going on here. There's ways around that, like it's like kind of more within the settings of the paint itself. So let's go in and select all these. And then let's go into the Fleck properties. And just turn the impasto and looseness all the way up. Now this can help you kind of smooth it out a little bit. I mean, the truth is like you'll really just kind of be tweaking depending on like the paint you do and like the distance between things. You want to like, if you can, try and get the distance right before you do all this tweaking, because that'll help avoid this in the final product. But since this is a tutorial, I'm not gonna redo it because this is just about showing concepts. I mean, really, like getting this right will take some trial and error. But just by doing that, not only do we have like a posable cape here, but tweaking, like upping the impasto and the looseness also kind of like gives the cloth a little bit more volume. And here's a little extra tip while we're in here. You can go into, well, let's get that all the way up. You can go into clones, and don't go too crazy with this because you can very easily accidentally hit your paint limit. But if you do positional duplicates and put the spread like maybe down to like 2, even with like 10% copies or so and 2% spread, you've added a lot of thickness to your cloth. So let's just go ahead and do that on the other side here. So what it's doing is it's basically like duplicating the paintings a whole bunch and then spreading them out just a little bit. So that kind of gives you like a little bit of a thicker cape. So let's start time and see where we're at now. So you can see it's kind of behaving like cloth, but the assembly is not really doing what we want. So let's go and make that keyframe that I showed you earlier. So let's go into this group. And then let's grab a keyframe. And I'm going to make it a little bit smaller and then hold L1 to stamp it onto a surface, which can be a little finicky sometimes. All right, we're now recording what the keyframe does. So we're going to do a little tap here, a little tap here, and a little tap here. And also a little tap here. And then we're going to make sure that that keyframe is always powered on and has some springiness. Start with like 20%, see how that goes. Let's go in and see how this is working out. So you can see that we have a cape of sorts, and it flops around when you move around. But if you run backwards, look at that. Doesn't clip through the character. And that's just because of the sculpts themselves. Now let's turn off our face camera thing here. And that's really just because of the sculpts. Sculpts are making that, or stopping that from happening. And that's basically it. That's the concept. What you want to do too with your rigs, now that you've got their behavior the way you want them, is make them invisible. And while we're going into this one, since we still have those connectors, we can pose it a little bit. Oops. And then from here, you could like sculpt kind of the top part of the cape, like the part that wraps around the shoulders or whatever, and make that just kind of a sculpt that flows nicely into the moving cloth itself. So now, without the sculpts in the way, you can see how that works pretty good in motion. Could maybe tweak it a little bit. Once you've got this stuff set up, you might as well just turn off preview and visibility. I could bring this in a little bit. And maybe let's go in and amp up the springiness just a bit to give it a little bit more freedom of movement. Yeah, that feels a little bit better. Sorry if there's a little bit of lag there. I'm not sure if I'm on a remote play right now, so I'm not sure if that's happening or not. But yeah, there you go. That's a cape that will not clip through your character when you walk backwards. If you're doing like a third-person game where the character's always facing the camera. Now, because I upped the springiness a little bit there, it's going a bit beyond what we would want, but that's the whole point, is you want to make sure you're tweaking this stuff. And what you can also do to clean this up a little bit is tweak the connectors themselves. Because even though the keyframe is kind of keeping everything in place, if you add limiting to the connectors, that can definitely help things as well. So for example, we could do like lock rotation, and then for like this, these like hinges here, you can keep the cape from flopping around like too much in one direction or the other. You can also use tweak the slider to maybe have a little bit farther maximum distance if you want the cape to fly back a little bit farther when the character is running around and jumping. And from there, yeah, you're just kind of tweaking and making sure that the cloth behaves the way you want to based on the type of character you're making, where the cloth is positioned, all that kind of stuff. Now, sometimes when you add limits to a ball joint, things can get a little weird, but there we go. That seems to be solving our issue pretty well. So for, this boring stick figure man here, maybe you would tweak the arm or the arm vigor or something to make sure that their arms don't clip through when you're walking backwards. It's really going to be a case-by-case basis for your character, but I hope that this gets you started in making things work the way you want to without having any collision. With your sculpts all set up like this, that you also have some additional posing options for your cloth. So for example, you can like do a little bit of rotation. Probably might work a little bit better if we go up here and do this. So you can say like, like turn it a certain way or angle it up a little bit to get some more curve. Yeah. Let's give it a little bit more of a natural clothy shape, even though the assembly itself is pretty unnatural. And you can also keyframe the position of the assembly as needed. So for example, this cape is not flying back that much when we run, but what we can do is go into the puppet tweak menu, or however you've set up your posing for your character, and just make a different position for the cape part of the keyframe. So for example, for the run here, we can scope in and pull this out a bit, angle it up. And then while we're at it, we could maybe adjust the springiness of the keyframe just for while he's running, so we can make it more springy. And your results will vary. Here I've clearly made it way too far out, so the cape is like stretching out unnaturally, but again, that's kind of the whole point. You are tweaking your cloth to behave the way you want to. Like really, this is not going to be an end-all be-all solution for everything, but this will give you the control you need to make sure that your cloth is behaving the way you want it to. As opposed to just making some paintings physical and then hoping for the best. But you know what? That is a great segue into what I want to talk about next real quick. Before doing an assembly like this, it's worth seeing if you actually need to, because there's a lot you can do with just a set of paintings to limit collision besides doing an assembly like this. So let's start from scratch. You know what? I like that guy. Let's keep him. Okay, so let's grab a new puppet. It's so bad with these menus sometimes. All right, new puppet. And then let's scope into him. And then let's go into paint mode and just make a quick and dirty cape. And do good old rule flex. Make that a little smaller, and then let's just draw a little line. Hold on, I still got surface snap on, which is not useful here. There we go. And actually, in this case, we can make this a single painting. So let's go back in and hit circle to get the flex off of the imp, and then just grab our original line here, move it over a bit, and rotate it. Nah, that's not great. Okay, let's try that again. Rotate this out a bit. Surface snap still on or something? Oh, whoops. That's tentacle snap. So tentacle snap will attach the end of the fleck to different surfaces. I wonder. There we go. Okay. And boom, we got a cape. Okay, so let's attach it to the puppet. So let's grab the cape, L1 and X to scope in. Torso is always a good place to attach a cape. So let's see what we can do with a painting without any other adjustments. So to start, paint does not have any physics on it, so this will be boring and not do anything. If we scope into it and tweak it, we can of course make it physical, and the default floppiness is pretty dang floppy and will cause the paint to kind of stretch a lot, especially when you're running, which doesn't always look great. This doesn't look terrible, but let's see what we can do to clean it up a bit. So first, default position of the cape should not be like this, so let's give it a little bit of gravity. That should do. And then let's take the floppiness down considerably. Add a little bit more gravity. Maybe we can angle it down a little bit so its default position is more realistic. All right. So already we've got a cape that feels a lot more like a cape. It's got a bit of weight to it. It's not stretching out super far when we run around. It's not bad. Of course, we do have the classic problem of if we are like facing the camera, for example, or otherwise allowing the puppet to walk backwards, then it's going to be clipping. Now, what can we do to solve this? This is a trick I just started playing with, but what you can do is use a little bit of logic to tweak the behavior of the cloth in different circumstances. So let's go into the puppet's microchip and do some scary logic. So I'm going to go into the controller logic here, and I'm going to grab a microchip just to keep things clean. And let's give it a nice little cloth-like icon like that. Call it cloth. Okay. So let's see if we can tweak the behavior of the cloth based on how the puppet's moving. So first thing I'm going to do is grab a controller sensor. I'm not going to worry about this stuff. We're going to make this thing remote controllable. And we're going to grab the L1, or the left stick symbol, or signal, sorry. And we're going to grab a splitter. And what that's going to do is give us our X and Y. So I believe what we want is the X movement, or no, sorry, the Y movement, up and down. So what we're going to be doing is detecting the controller, or the movement of the joystick. Then what we're going to do, and there might be a better way to do this. I'm actually not sure how to detect which way a puppet is facing while it's moving, so there might be a way easier way to do this, but this at least will work for the concept that we're trying to pull off here. So let's grab a calculator, or two calculators, and this is going to be a greater than and a less than. And the default second value is 0, so that works out. So we're going to grab the up-down movement, put that in for A for both of these. So basically the up-down movement is either greater than or less than 0. And then we are going to grab some keyframes that will tweak the behavior of the cloth. So this first keyframe will make the floppiness go up a little bit, let's say, maybe like 25. So that'll be like while the puppet's moving forward. And then let's duplicate that keyframe. Oops. And for when the puppet is walking backwards, let's turn the floppiness all the way off. Or maybe like 5%, just so that it still moves around a little bit. Oops, I need to close that. And then let's connect these wires into the power of these keyframes. So I believe if I have this right, when the puppet is going forward, the floppiness will go up, and when they're going backward, the floppiness will go down. I'm going to pin this to the screen, go into test mode. Let's possess that puppet. And there you go. Without having to do any crazy sculpt assemblies or anything, we already have a cape that is behaving way better than just a simple painting. So that's pretty much it. I hope this was helpful. Feel free to post any questions you have in the comments. I guess I'll put my Twitter in the description so you can follow me on there. And I hope this was helpful. Thanks for watching.